Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this RailTech Masterclass. It's the second one of 2025. So thank you for attending. If you want, you can say hello in the chat while we wait for a few more people to sign in. You can say where you're from. And yeah, if you have any thoughts or to share, you can do that. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is to present the platform to you and how this webinar is going to work. So first off, I'm Katja. I'm Events and Content Manager at Eversense. I will be hosting this webinar today with a wonderful speaker from Nobian, Wayne Hendricks. What we going to do, so this is a 45-ish minute webinar. So we're going to have 30 minutes of talking between Wayne and myself. And then we have 10 to 15 minutes at the end to ask your questions live if you have some, and we'll be taking them. So to understand how the platform works, it's pretty easy. So you have the chat to basically say hello or say some of the things that you would like to share. You have a dedicated questions tab at the bottom right of your screen. That's where it would be nice to ask your questions instead of asking in the chat, for the main reason that you have an amazing feature that's called upvoting. And if you see people asking questions that you find interesting, you can upvote it, and then it's going to go up in the list of questions, and we'll be taking the questions with the most upvotes first when we take the questions. You have a polls tab. I don't think we have polls today, but if we do, you're going to have a pop-up there. And that's basically what's interesting for you today. Just also for your information, you're going to receive the replay of the webinar today or tomorrow. So yeah, if you have to leave at like the middle of it, you're going to still have the end, so no worries. A small word about Eversense if you're not familiar with our company. So we're a French company. We are a software editor specialized in a rail TMS. So that's the solution that we offer, the TVMS, Transportation Visibility Management System. And our goal is to help shipper digitalize the entirety of their rail freight operations, so from order to invoicing. We do that across all of Europe. And also the goal of the solution is to help the collaboration between the shippers and the entirety of the ecosystem for rail. So that includes obviously carriers, wagon leasers, freight forwarders, and the likes. And here you can see a few of the people that we currently work with. And you can go on our website, eversense.com, if you want to have more info. You can ask us questions. Also, you have my contact at the end. Yeah, so let's start. So today, as I was saying, we are here to speak and talk with Nobian. So with Wayne Hendricks from Nobian, he's Director of Business Planning there. What I'm going to do is to let you present yourself, Wayne, and also your company, so people here, and then we'll dive into the presentation. So I'm going to let you the screen. And so, yeah, you can show your screen. So while you do that, again, reminder, you can ask your questions in the questions tab, and we'll be taking them directly at the end. And don't hesitate to, if you don't have a question yourself, but if you see one that you find interesting, you can do that.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Katja. Well, I think you should be seeing my screen by now.
Yes.
Well, good morning, everybody. I said my name is Wayne Hendricks, Director of Business Planning at Nobian. In my role, I'm responsible for the customer service desk, supply planning, and logistics. And I also have a team process excellence supporting in all the improvements. I would like to tell you something about Nobian before we start. When you look at Nobian, then we are a chemical value chain. So that means we start with the mining of salt. We create essential chemicals. We have a big part in energy because it's really an energy intensive industry that we are in. But energy is also very important for us looking at the future. We would like to be CO2 neutral. So we have a lot of actions in place to make sure we are CO2 neutral by 2040. And with the agreement we have with our government in the Netherlands, we think that in the Netherlands we can even be CO2 neutral between 2030 and 2040. So that's a very nice achievement. We also want to play a role in the whole energy transition. So we create storage caverns with the salt we mine, and those storage caverns can be used for instance, for storage of hydrogen or compressed air, which can be used again for energy in energy transition area. So what are our main products? So as said, we produce salt. With the salt and the energy, we have electrolyzers where we produce chlorine and caustic soda and hydrogen. And we also have a chlorine derivative called chloromethanes. Where are we situated? Well, we have 3 salt production sites which are situated in Mariage, Denmark, Delfzijl and Hengelo, Netherlands. Then we have 5 chlor-alkali plants. Our biggest plant is in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and we have one in Delfzijl in the Netherlands. And then in Germany, we have 3 chlor-alkali plants in Edelburen, Bielefeld, and Frankfurt. And in Frankfurt, we also have our chloromethanes plant. As said, if you want to know more about Nobian or me or whatever, you can always contact me, or you can visit our website, and there you can find more information. So let's go to the subject of today. So setting the stage. If you want to automate, at least if we want to automate, we started with our strategy. We said we want to go to a certain direction. We want to be somewhere in 10 years from now. So what do you want to do? With that, we also said we not just want to automate a part of the system, we want to automate the whole order to cash process from beginning to end. And to do that, we said the first step is to go to one process. So actually, we had a lot of processes in our organization with the different businesses. And we decided that we first design what the best process should be, and then we try to fit all the different businesses we have into this one process, which makes it much easier to automate. And if you do that, you also need to focus on the exceptions. If you do not incorporate the exceptions in your whole process, then it will never work, because the people do have to do those exceptions as well. So you have to find a way to incorporate them. And in the first years, I think that's recognizable for everybody. The whole automation part was all about efficiency, more speed, more quality, and less cost. But later on, as we followed in our journey, we saw that it's not just about efficiency, it's also about customer satisfaction. If you automate, then you also are faster, you can react faster on changes, you can inform your customer better, and with all those things, you can increase your customer satisfaction. So it's not just about efficiency. And then, of course, driving forces and mindset. It started with, I have a dream. And to be honest, I was one of the parties who had that dream. We said we really would like to be at a level where we have the perfect order as much as possible implemented, which means we want to automate the whole order to cash process. If you want to do that, then you should at least make sure you have your leadership behind you. So there should be a common sense in the organization about where you want to go, how you want to do it, and which tools you give available to everybody to make sure that we get to the level we want to be. And that means that we also need to have a strategy in place, because in 10 years from now, you don't want to be the party who is left behind. You want to stay ahead of the competition, or at least with automation, you want to do as much as the competition is doing. And if you automate, then you also are increasing employee motivation, because automation means you take away a lot of simple tasks. Keying in orders is not the nicest thing to do. And the moment you do that, you also get to a higher level of the job. And that means you are getting people on board which have a higher education. People are motivated more because they have to do a job which is more appealing to them and less boring. So you really also are motivating people to come on board and to stay on board. And as I already said, it will increase a lot in the customer satisfaction as well.
If I may then What's interesting here is that I don't see a mention of, for example, ROI as one of the main driving forces behind this change and digitalization. Of course, you spoke about efficiency before, but does that mean that you have a different approach regarding, the main benefits and advantages that you have to see from this change and why you're bringing it forward, other than only having a concrete monetary ROI?
Yeah, good question. Is it okay if I come back on that later because I have it
Yeah.
in my presentation?
Nice. Okay.
So then talking about challenges and benefits of automation. Well, I don't think it's something new, but the biggest challenge is change management. And with that change management, there are a few things. As already said, you need to incorporate the exceptions. If you don't do that, people start thinking about whole new ways of working around what you defined. And then in the end, you find out there's no efficiency at all, or the processes are not being followed, and you get a lot of mistakes in your organization. Then you have the 2080 rule, and I'll come back on that later as well. And you need to have monitoring in place. What does it mean? Well, if you are increasing your automation, you have much more interfaces. You have to make sure it all works in the right way. You don't want your customer to call you at a certain day to say, well, I should have received a truck today on RTC, but I don't see it. And then you found out that your interfaces are not working anymore. So you have to make sure that you have the monitoring controls in place, that every step is monitored in the right way, so you can react fast if something goes wrong. Motivation. I mean, if you automate, you also have to make sure you get the people on board. So you have to give them a possibility to also talk about the process, to incorporate their experience in the whole process, and to make them sure that if they are moving to the new process, all their worries are being handled. So you have to make sure people are on board as well, and that they are motivated to move to the new automation system. And management, we already said that you need the management behind you, but what I encountered in the last 10 years at least, is that there are also changes in management. So you have to make sure that if there are changes, that the new management understands where you are, where you're going, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you made that decision before. So they step on the same train, and in the end, they are following the same route, and they're not going in a different direction. You also have benefits, of course. So if you look at the benefits, we already talked about efficiency. And as said, you don't want to be behind with your competition. So you have to make sure you are at least at the same level, but even better ahead of your competition. Then also it's a basis for development. The moment you start automating, at a certain moment you have your basis, and then you get new ideas based on what is already there, which you didn't see before. You only see it once you have the basis automation in place. And I come back on that with the automated debit notes. Then we talked about motivation. Well, we have something in place, which is a connection to improvement, I would say, because in most cases, the automate, you also want to improve. And what we did is that we introduced a Lean Six Sigma program for our people. And we sent them to a training. They get to do a small project for improving something in their own area. If you normally look at automation and bigger projects, they are always top down and they are good for the organization. But there's a lot of small things that people do every day where they think, why are we doing this? This is waste. So we learn them to take care of that waste, to talk about it, to come up with a small project and to eliminate that waste. And by doing that, you're not just increasing the motivation of people because they don't have to do that annoying task anymore, but you also are getting to a higher level again. And it also means that if they are doing that, they are part of the organization. They help making the change. So they feel much more connected to the organization. As already said, basis for development, and then you can further work on that. And one example is the automated debit notes. So a number of years ago, we started with sending demurrage debit notes to our customers. So we have an agreement, for instance, they can keep the RTC for unloading for 8 days, and then they kept it 12 days, and then we sent them an invoice for 4 days, which we agreed in the contract. But when we did that, we got a lot of discussions because the information we got from DB Schenker was not correct. The RTC arrived earlier, went away later or earlier. So we got a lot of hasslement in the whole settlement. And a lot of those debit notes were not paid because we couldn't get the right information. So when we implemented the automation, the GPS tracking, we knew exactly when it went into the premises of the customer, when it went out. So we made sure we had the right information in master data in our tables in SAP. And at that moment, the moment the RTC gets back at our site, it looks at the whole trip, it looks at the number of days that it stayed at the customer, it compares it to what we had in the tables in SAP of how many days we agreed. And if there are demerge days, then automatically the system is generating a debit note to the customer with all the information needed, and nobody is touching that, it goes out automatically. So I think that's one of the examples. If you have the basis in place, you get to the next level of automation. And I also think that if you would like to automate nowadays, it's much easier to implement than 10 years ago. There are systems, like already said, the TMS system from Eversense, but there are also much more customers that have experience in automation. They already do a lot in automation. They have experienced people who know about interfacing. So I think it's easier now to make the next step in automation than 10 years ago. When we talk about the foundation of digitalization, we talked already about one process. I think that's a very important step to make sure you have one process in place. But standardization of interfaces is also something where you can make a difference. We have a lot of interfacing with a lot of third parties, and the more you have the possibility to make sure you have one kind of interface with the same data, the easier automation becomes. Not just the implementation, but also if there are changes, because you only need to change it once. So I think standardization of interfaces is an important step in automation. And of course, I think everybody knows master data management, having the right data integrity, that's also a really important step. And when you look at your customer master data, make sure that your text, your agreements, and everything you agreed with your customer is right in the system. You have to have the right fleet master data. We have over 300 RTCs, over 610 containers. So you have to make sure that they are in the system with the right data. How much can they load? When they have to go into revision. For what products are they fit? So you have to make sure all that is there if you want to automate it. And you need to write routes in the system. We actually found out when we wanted to automate this that we needed to expand our routes, because if you send an RTC away to a customer on a Monday or on a Friday, there are different routes. It takes a different number of days. So you need to make sure all the right routes are in the system. And that's also part of your master data. And then an important step for us was to implement the GPS tracking and tracing. Because if you implement GPS tracking and tracing, you can also report a lot on what is happening. You can make sure that you have a more efficient fleet. And then you are also able to build again on what you already have. And to do that, we first of all had to, of course, connect the GPSs to our RTCs. And then you get discussions, where should we do it? You have to make sure there's something where you can screw the GPSs on. Next step was to connect the orders to the GPS. If you have your GPS connected to the RTC, I still don't know where my order is. I have to go into a system, look at the RTC, and that's not what we want. We want a proactive system. So that's why we send all our orders to Safi, which is the system we are using. And with that, we connect our GPS to the different orders that we have. You need to define your geofences, which was also very interesting, because you either have a too small or too big geofences, which you need to correct. At a certain moment, we had an RTC going out, and a day later, it was already back. And we thought, how is that possible? It takes 4 days to get to the customer. And then we saw that it was going out, and it came back via a route where it just passed a little bit into our geofence again. And by that, the system thought it was back again. So you need to correct the geofences and make sure you have the right geofences for the reporting. We also implemented order statuses. So we have a status when an order is loaded, when an order is on its way to the customer, when it's arriving at the customer, when it's leaving the customer, when it's on the way back to our site, and when it's arrived at the site. And next to that, we have also some statuses about availability of the RTC, going into repair, revision, all kinds of statuses you need to further automate your system. And that's where also alarm levels come in, because the moment you have all the statuses, you can also enter alarm levels. We have an alarm level where we get a message that we are now sending to customers the moment the RTC is delayed. But we also have an alarm level set, and that's a nice example when the RTC is standing still for too long time. A number of years ago, before we had this GPS system in place, we had an RTC empty HEL standing on the side track. We don't know why it went on the side track, but somebody put it on the side track, and it actually stood there for half a year before somebody notices it. So with that alarm level, you get a message earlier knowing, hey, we should look into it, what is happening here. So you can set alarm level on all kinds of different things, which will help you to smoothen your whole process. As I already said, you have to build the system one step at a time, and it's the whole order to cash process. And we started at order entry. So if you look at the order entry part, then we looked at our customers. We have customers that have a low number of orders or a high number of orders. And when you look at our existing contracted customers, we gave them an opportunity that if they are in the low area, that they can order via our website. So they can go to our website, create an order there. If you look at the customer with a high number of orders, there we would like to have our systems connected via EDI. So they create a purchase order in their system, automatically generating a sales order in our system. We also have VMI in place for a number of our customers, which is vendor managed inventory. And that means with telemetrics, we are looking into the tank of our customer, and based upon agreed reorder levels, we automatically generate orders for reordering and making sure the tank is filled up again. And then in the middle, we have something that we call quick link email. You have a lot of customers that have an automated system, and they send out the purchase order via PDF to us. And the nice thing about a PDF is that it always has the information at the same place. So we use OCR, optimal character recognition, that reads the PDF and then translate that automatically into a sales order for our system. So in those ways, we try to get the order in automatically. Every order that comes in automatically in our system is stopped because we have a workflow that starts and there's a delivery block. And then that workflow is going through a number of steps that are critical for the order. So I have not put them all here, but the most important ones. So it looks, is there a price in the system? Because we need to have an agreement with the customer. Is there a credit check we need to handle? Do we need planning steps from which side we want to deliver or whatever is needed in the planning area? Is the forwarder assigned? Is there a right delivery date? So we look at weekend dates, or we look at the fact that it's too early, so we need to make a rush order out of it. And is the order complete? And after all those steps are checked, automatically this workflow is taking out the block for delivery, and then we create a delivery. The delivery is created automatically via a batch job in our system, and we actually inform our site then with the information that the RTC or a truck is coming and it needs to be loaded. We have connected our way bridges to our SAP system. So after the loading and in the trucks that we are loading, we already also have 50% of all our trucks being loaded by the drivers themselves using our loading control system. But in all the situations, we have an automatic goods issue, because the moment we have the second weighing, the information is automatically sent to our SAP system, and then with the job, we automatically post goods issue. After creation of that delivery, we also create shipments. Those are sent out automatically via the transport management system. We have a tariff determination, so the moment we have the shipment, we also know it's going from A to B, and we have a tariff agreed with our forwarder, and that is automatically picked up. And we have, of course, freight invoice handling. The difference we have there is that we are not waiting until the forwarder sends us an invoice. We send a credit note to the forwarder. The big advantage of that is that the forwarder needs to check if it's okay. And as said, we have tracking and tracing in place, so we can inform our customer if the order is not coming on time, but of course it's also for reporting and efficiency purposes. Once the goods issue has been done, we automatically create our invoice. We have automated pricing coming in, and the invoice is sent out digitally by PDF to our customers without being touched by our customer service desk. We monitor the whole thing because I said you need to monitor everything, and we take care of exceptions and outliers to make sure we're not disturbing the process. What does this all mean for our forwarders? Well, we have a strategic partnership with our forwarders. So we have long-term contracts, usually for 2 or even 3 years. And the reason why we do that is that we need to build trust with each other. And if you have a long-term contract for 3 years, both parties are willing to invest in the relation, but also to invest in equipment. And you need to invest in the interfacing as well, because you need to have a link to exchange all the information with each other. What does it mean? Well, in the end, we see our forwarders as valued partners, and I also hope that they see us as valued partners. And by we are doing that for a longer time with each other, you also get closer to the systems and the processes, and that brings out ideas from both sides to further smoothen the process you have, and by that become more efficient again, of course.